Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for Senators Warner and Duckworth for being here. Now, yesterday, Mark and I and other members sat through more than a 2.5-hour classified briefing with the administration, and after all that time, we got no real answers. They don't know where they're headed. They think they can do step 1, take out Maduro, and they have no idea what steps 2 through 10 are going to be, which gives all of us a great deal of worry. I asked 4 simple questions. How many American troops are we going to send to Venezuela? They don't know. How long will we be running Venezuela? Don't know. Unknown. How much is this going to cost? We tried to pin them down. No answer. What country is next? Unknown, but I was very unsatisfied when I asked them, are they considering going into other countries? It was really troubling. And last night, when asked, Trump told Americans he's in charge of Venezuela. When asked who's in charge of Venezuela, Trump said, me. One man, no idea, no plan. Whatever pops into his head, it seems, from that briefing. So let me ask a simple question. How does spending potentially years and potentially billions of taxpayer dollars in Venezuela put America first? How does this help families here at home pay the rent, pay the mortgage, pay for groceries, pay their energy bill, pay for their health care? Because right now, millions of Americans are losing coverage. Millions more are paying thousands, even tens of thousands more for health insurance. And what are Trump and Republicans doing? Nothing. He's all focused on Venezuela and Latin America. America first means lowering health care costs here at home, instead of using taxpayer dollars to build up the oil fields in Venezuela. It means helping American farmers, not bailing out Argentinian farmers. It means bringing manufacturing back to our shores, not handing over critical chips to China. It means helping families afford rent, mortgages, and energy bills. Instead, Trump is focused, it seems, on helping his big oil buddies, and he's focused on personal vanity projects like renaming the Kennedy Center and choosing which marble armrest to install. Instead of figuring out and helping us reduce health care costs, he's figuring out which marble armrest to install. The result? Life's getting a lot harder for American families. Republicans aren't just ignoring it, they're making it a lot worse. Senator Warner.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Let me also say one of the things that came out of the briefing yesterday was how extraordinary our military has been to execute this mission under fire without the loss of a single American life. It's really extraordinary. And as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs made clear, every component of the military was used. Because what this was a military action. And it is not the notion that the administration has put forward that somehow this is simply a legal action serving a warrant. It's absurd. It doesn't pass the smell test. And the ironic thing is here, they have used the argument on attacking the so-called drug boats as military action as opposed to legal enforcement, while this supposedly was simply a legal enforcement. It does not pass the smell test. I commend our military, but echoing what Senator Schumer said, military execution without a plan for the day after leads to devastating consequences. Secondarily, the president on Saturday said he's not only going to run Venezuela, but this is not going to cost the American taxpayer a dime. Haven't we heard that promise before in Iraq, where Iraq oil was going to pay for the whole cost of the invasion? Now he's saying Venezuelan oil is going to pay for all of this operation. The challenge is this. We have an economic chokehold on Venezuela at this point by the blockade. To restore, though, Venezuela's oil exporting ability to about 1 million barrels a day, to get back up to where it was a decade plus ago, 4 million barrels a day, will literally take 2 to 4 years of rebuilding and some level of security for companies that go in. We couldn't get an answer as well as how much is the cost of having 20% of our fleet, the largest armada assembled in the Caribbean since the 20th century, how much per day is it costing our fleet to be stationed off of Venezuela, maintaining that economic chokehold? And by the fact that at the end of the day, the Venezuelans are going to pay for all of this, or Venezuelan oil, does that mean that 20% of the fleet has to stay there a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? These are the kind of questions that need to be answered. And I'll also echo what Senator Schumer said. A lot of Virginians over the holidays lost their health insurance. This does nothing to make health insurance more affordable, groceries more affordable, drive down the cost of rent. That's what the American people want the President and the Congress to focus on. With that, my friend, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Senator Warner. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Warner. Thank you, Senator Schumer. I just want to say how in awe I am of the 160th air crew. Those boys and gals are badass, and all of those rotary wing air crew, I bow down to them. The Delta Force folks, what they managed to do. I've flown over urban areas in a combat situation, and what they did was remarkable. You know, here's the thing though. I've flown in a war that was fought over oil. I flew to out of Fort Knox to Kuwait and into Iraq 21 years ago to serve in Operation Iraqi Freedom. And I went not because I supported the war. Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, he was a dictator, and he deserved to be removed from power. However, the problem we have is that it is not the American people's responsibility to go around the world removing dictators from power and then running foreign countries when we have problems here at home. Maduro, brutal dictator. I would never dispute that. But the problem we have is the fact that yet again we have now entered into a war where there is no known off-ramp. If Donald Trump wants to run a country, he should think about running the United States of America. I was home over the break and I spoke to a gentleman whose health insurance policy for him and his wife are going to go up from $3,000 to $12,000. He cannot afford those premiums. His wife is sick. He's giving up his health insurance in order to be able to afford hers because they're on one income because she cannot work. Look, I don't know, maybe Trump dodged the draft so many times that he isn't capable of understanding the lessons that the rest of us have learned from past conflicts that are based on lies. We fought a war in Iraq for oil. We sent troops there, myself included, looking for weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. It was a war that was built on bluster and bravado from ignorance and arrogance of those in leadership, and yet here we are again in Venezuela. The reality is Trump's actions this past weekend and his reckless escalation in the days since seems all too familiar to those of us who have served in uniform. He has risked American lives to interfere in another nation's politics without legal basis, and for no good reason that he can articulate other than for the greed of oil. Trump campaigned on bringing costs down. He promised he'd get our nation out of wars, not into them. He campaigned on America first. Well, you know what? That's bullshit, because that's not how he's governing. When I go home to Illinois, folks are talking about healthcare costs, grocery costs. Tell me, please tell me how he's making America great again when those costs for everyday Americans are skyrocketing because of his policies. When farmers tell me, you know what, I'm 8th generation, there won't be a 9th generation, we're about to lose our family farm because of his tariffs. Tell me how he's making America great again. So let me just say this. Instead of helping folks afford basic needs, Trump is more focused on regime change and building his Marie Antoinette ballroom, things that do not help everyday families we are supposed to be serving. It is a true testament to our troops' abilities that no Americans died during this operation. But we are already seeing reports that several Americans were injured. And yet at the same time, he's devastating the VA. He's firing. He had a goal of firing 83,000 employees from the VA, the same department that is supposed to be taking care of veterans who serve in these wars. Trump has never understood that the real cost of war isn't measured in dollars and cents, but in the blood and sacrifices of our service members and their families. But our troops know all too well just how costly it can be when and their families. But our troops know all too well just how costly it can be when a president relies on lies to engage in war over oil without a clearly defined end state. We know better. The American people know better. Listen, we've always known that Donald Trump is a coward and a liar. But this weekend, he proved that when he missed the Vietnam War, he also missed the lessons Americans learned there, the lessons that my buddies and I learned in Iraq decades later. So I'm here today to remind him what the true cost of war. I'm here to say that if he cares about putting America first, then maybe he should focus on running America and not Venezuela. Thank you.
I always try to call on a woman first. Go ahead, in the red. Well, you don't have to answer. Right there. It's the men are always woo-woo-woo, so I like to.
On healthcare, President Trump in his speech to House Republicans today that said they should take healthcare as an issue from Democrats and own it. But he also did say they should show some flexibility on high. Do you think President Trump is open to a bipartisan deal, or do you think he's urging them to go down a partisan route?
From all their actions, they're totally partisan. None of them say extend the credits. Thune and Johnson are against extending them for a day, let alone a week, a month, a year, which is what's going to bring the health care cost down as much as. The Republican caucuses seem wedded to extending high. That's again when you talk to their leadership. And so I think the best thing they can do is have the House pass Hakeem Jeffries' bill, send it over here, let Thune put it on the floor, and let's pass it. Go ahead, Schumer.
Given what's happened here in Venezuela and the actions that Marco Rubio has taken, do you regret your vote to confirm him?
I am deeply, deeply disappointed in Marco Rubio, even before Venezuela, and even more so now. Yes.
Democrats used the appropriations process to restrict the Trump administration from deploying a major contingent of troops to Venezuela or to prevent the Trump administration from going after Cuba or another country.
Okay. Our first focus has to be on what's coming up to Thursday, which is the War Powers Act, which Tim Kaine, Adam Schiff, Rand Paul, and myself have introduced. If we can pass that, and it only needs 2 more votes, it got 2 Republican votes last time, all future action that they do in Venezuela could stop. That's our #1 focus. That's the best thing to do right now. Yes.
Yeah. How do you see the security implications of the Maduro operation for our allies in the Pacific? There's especially increasing concern in Taiwan that China will become more belligerent.
Mark Warner has said this well. I'll paraphrase it and let him elaborate. What now prevents? There's always been norms in foreign policy that have served the United States well for hundreds of years, and certainly in the post-World War II era. What now prevents Xi from a Chinese court indicting a Taiwan leader and then scooping them up and arresting them? What prevents Putin from doing that to Ukrainians? This is very dangerous. Mark?
Let me just add, international order isn't perfect, but it puts some boundaries. If any large country can say to a smaller country next door, we don't like your leader, and he or she broke our law, and then go in and extract him, where does that lead? It leads to chaos, which has been the main drive of this Trump administration. The other thing that we heard on Saturday was we heard kind of a Trumpian approach about spheres of influence, or the Don Roe doctrine. For 75 years, under Democrats and Republican administrations alike, we thought, well, you know what? It's in our interest, best interest, to treat with respect the countries in Central America and South America, not as kind of us being the imperial leader of the whole hemisphere. This kind of 21st century imperialism means that, does China get all of East Asia now? Does Russia get all of the former Soviet Union? Does it get Germany or Czechoslovakia as well, or the Czech Republic as well, within their so-called sphere of influence? This is why this kind of chaotic, by the seat of the pants foreign policy, not only does it turn potentially partners in Central and South America against us, but it scares the hell out of all of our allies in terms of our commitment.
Leader Schumer. Thank you. On government funding here, when we talk about appropriations, though, why not then go to the math? I understand what you're saying about the Kaine resolution. I understand. Is there concern that you might have a government shutdown if you guys try to cut off funding for Venezuela?
We're focused on the Kaine resolution. That's the best way to go, and that's what we're focused on.
Why not use the power of the purse?
Can you please get your response to the president's recent rhetoric and threats toward Colombia, Iraq, Greenland, and Cuba? And has Congress made a mistake by giving them too much war power to the executive branch over the years?
Well, look, ask our Republican colleagues that. We've tried several war power resolutions. We've gotten a few people to join them, but not enough. And it's needed now more than ever with a reckless president a president who was just reckless when it comes to foreign policy. It's sort of fly by the seat of your pants. In that briefing, you know, I said, oh, it's hope for the best, but they don't have any plans. You can't do things that way. And so War Powers Act is extremely, extremely important.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
On the issue of these other nation states, you know, Maduro lost in 24. I wish the previous administration had done more to push him out at that point. But when you start talking about Colombia and Mexico, they're nations that had democratic elections. And we're going to somehow say we're going to superimpose our position on democratically elected states. What message does that send to the world? And the whole notion, I think the first few months, people kind of joked about Greenland. But the idea that he's potentially posing a serious military threat, nothing would lead to the absolute destruction of NATO more than American aggressive action against a long-term ally like Denmark.
I asked for some assurances that they were not planning operations in other countries, and I named a few of the ones you mentioned, including Colombia and Cuba, and I was very, very disappointed in their answer. Thank you, everybody.